Thank you all for joining us. Mary Oliver, September 10, 1935 to January 17, 2009, was a beloved and popular poet. Among her many published poetry books are American Primitive, 1983, Dreamwork, 1986, and 1,000 Mornings, 2012, which we are reading from today. One of her main themes is nature. Her poetry contains clarity, simplicity, accessibility, and revelations. Her influences are Whitman, Thoreau, and Edna St. Vincent Millay. Oliver won many awards, including the Pulitzer Prize and the Shelley Memorial Prize. It's always an honor and a pleasure when these residents, staff, and poets return to the show. It's also an honor and a pleasure to welcome the acclaimed actor and comedian Ike Barinholtz to read with us today. The magnificent readers in order of appearance are Corinne Conley, Ike Barinholtz, Amélie Frank, Courteney Bailey, Susan Nathe, Lynne Bronstein. Here's Corinne Conley.
I go down to the shore. I go down to the shore in the morning, and depending on the hour, the waves are rolling in or moving out. And I say, oh, I am miserable. What should I do? And the sea says in its lovely voice, excuse me, I have work to do. I happen to be standing. I don't know where prayers go or what they do. Do cats pray while they sleep, half asleep in the sun? Does the opossum pray as it crosses the street? The sunflowers, the old black oak, growing older every year? I know I can walk through the world along the shore or under the trees with my mind filled with things of little importance, in full self-attendance, a condition I can't really call being alive. Is a prayer a gift or a petition? Or does it matter? The sunflowers blaze. Maybe that's their way. Maybe the cats are sound asleep. Maybe not. While I was thinking this, I happened to be standing just outside my door with my notebook open, which is the way I begin every morning. Then a wren in a privet began to sing. He was positively drenched in enthusiasm. I don't know why. Well, why not? I wouldn't persuade you from whatever you believe or whatever you don't. That's your business. But I thought of the wren singing. What could this be if it isn't a prayer? So I just listened, my pen in the air. Foolishness? No, it's not. Sometimes I spend all day trying to count the leaves on a single tree. To do this, I have to climb branch by branch and write down the numbers in a little book. So I suppose from their point of view, it's reasonable that my friends say, what foolishness. She's got her head in the clouds again. But it's not. Of course, I have to give up, but by then I'm half crazy with the wonder of it. The abundance of the leaves, the quietness of the branches, the hopelessness of my effort. And I am in that delicious and important place, roaring with laughter, full of earth praise. The gardener. Have I lived enough? Have I loved enough? Have I considered right action enough? Have I come to any conclusion? Have I experienced happiness with sufficient gratitude? Have I endured loneliness with grace? I say this, or perhaps I'm just thinking it. Actually, I probably do think too much. Then I step out into the garden, where the gardener, who is said to be a simple man, is tending his children, the roses. After I fall down the stairs at the Golden Temple. For a while, I could not remember some word I was in need of, and I was bereaved and said, "Where are you, beloved friend?" If I were. There are lots of ways to dance and to spin. Sometimes it just starts. My feet first and then my entire body. I am spinning. No one can see it, but it's happening. I am so glad to be alive. I am so glad to be loving and loved. Even if I were close to the finish, even if I were at my final breath, I would be here to take a stand, bereft of such astonishments, but for them. If I were a Sufi, for sure I would be one of the spinning kind. And now let me introduce you to Ike Barinholtz.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Corinne. That was amazing. My voice is not as good as Corinne's. I just want to put that out there right now. It's not as smooth.
Oh, gosh.
This is Goodbye Fox. He was lying under a tree, licking up the shade. "Hello again, Fox," I said. "And hello to you too," said Fox, looking up and not bounding away. "You're not running away," I said. "Well, I've heard of your conversation about us. News travels even among foxes, as you might know or not know." "What conversation do you mean?" "Some lady said to you, 'The hunt is good for the fox.' And you said, 'Which fox?'" "Yes, I remember. She was huffed." "So you're okay in my book." "Your book? That was in my book. That's the difference between us." "Yes, I agree. You fuss over life with your clever words, mulling and chewing on its meaning while we just live it." "Oh. Could anyone figure it out to a finality? So why spend so much time trying? You fuss, we live." And he stood slowly, for he was old now, and ambled away. Poem of the One World. This morning, the beautiful white heron was floating along above the water. And then into the sky of this, the one world we all belong to, where everything, sooner or later, is a part of everything else. Which thought made me feel for a little while quite beautiful myself. And Bob Dylan, too. Anything worth thinking about is worth singing about, which is why we have songs of praise, songs of love, songs of sorrow, songs to the gods who have so many names, songs the shepherds sing on the lonely mountains while the sheep are honoring the grass by eating it, the dance songs of the bees to tell where the flowers suddenly in the morning light have opened, a chorus of many shouting to heaven, or at it, or pleading, or that greatest of love affairs, a violin and a human body, and a composer, maybe hundreds of years dead. I think of Schubert, scribbling on a cafe napkin. Thank you. Thank you. 3 things to remember. As long as you're dancing, you can break the rules. Sometimes breaking the rules is just extending the rules. Sometimes there are no rules. Hurricane. It didn't behave like anything you'd ever imagined. The wind tore at the trees, the rain fell for days, slanting hard, the back of the hand to everything. I watched the trees bow and their leaves fall and crawl back into the earth, as though that was that. This was one hurricane I'd lived through. The other one was of a different sort and lasted longer. Then I felt my own leaves giving up and falling. The back of the hand to everything. But listen now to what happened to the actual trees. Toward the end of the summer, they pushed new leaves from their stubbled limbs. It was the wrong season, yes, but they couldn't stop. They looked like telephone poles and didn't care. And after the leaves came blossoms. For some things, there are no wrong seasons, which is what I dream of for me. Today, I'm flying low and not saying a word. I'm letting all the voodoos of ambition sleep. The world goes on as it must. The bees in the garden rumbling a little, the fish leaping, the gnats getting eaten, and so forth. But I'm taking the day off. Quiet as a feather. I hardly move, though really I'm traveling at a terrific distance. Stillness. One of the doors into the temple. And with that, it is my honor to introduce Susan Hayden. Susan.
Hi, I'm Amélie Frank. I am sitting in for Susan Hayden today, and I'm sending Susan and her family all of our love here at the Van Nuys House of Poets. Thank you, Ike. The first time Percy came back, he was not sailing on a cloud. He was loping along the sand as though he had come a great way. "Percy," I cried out and reached to him. Those white curls. But he was unreachable, as music is present, yet you can't touch it. "Yes, it's all different," he said. "You're going to be very surprised." But I wasn't thinking of that. I only wanted to hold him. "Listen," he said, "I miss that too. And now you'll be telling stories of my coming back. And they won't be false, and they won't be true, but they'll be real." And then, as he used to, he said, "Let's go." And we walked down the beach together. Lines written in the days of growing darkness. Every year we have been witness to it, how the world descends into a rich mash in order that it may resume. And therefore, who would cry out to the petals on the ground to stay, knowing as we must how the vivacity of what was is married to the vitality of what will be? I don't say it's easy, but what else will do if the love one claims to have for the world be true? So let us go on cheerfully enough this and every crisping day, though the sun be swinging east and the ponds be cold and black and the sweets of the year be doomed. Blake dying. He lay with the pearl of his life under the pillow. Space shone cool and silvery in the empty cupboards while he heard in the distance, he said, the angels singing. Now and again his white wrists rose a little above the white sheet. When death is about to happen, does the body grow heavier or lighter? He felt himself growing heavier He felt himself growing lighter. When a man says he hears angels singing, he hears angels singing. When a man says he hears angels singing, he hears angels singing. The Mockingbird. All summer, the mockingbird in his pearl gray coat and his white windowed wings flies from the hedge to the top of the pine and begins to sing. But it's neither lilting nor lovely, for he is the thief of other sounds, whistles and truck brakes and dry hinges, plus all the songs of other birds in his neighborhood. Mimicking and elaborating, he sings with humor and bravado. So I have to wait a long time for the softer voice of his own life to come through. He begins by giving up all his usual flutter and settling down on the pine's forelock and then looking around as though to make sure he's alone. Then he slaps each wing against his breast where his heart is and, copying nothing, begins easing into it as though it was not half so easy as rollicking. As though his subject now was his true self, which, of course, was as dark and secret as anyone else's, and it was too hard. Perhaps you too understand, to speak or to sing it, to anything or anyone but the sky. The moth, the mountains, the rivers. Who can guess the luna's sadness who lives so briefly? Who can guess the impatience of stone longing to be ground again, to be part again of something livelier? Who can imagine in what heaviness the rivers remember their original clarity? Strange questions, yet I have spent worthwhile time with them, and I suggest them to you also, that your spirit grow in curiosity, that your life be richer than it is, that you bow to the earth as you feel how it actually is, that we, so clever and ambitious and selfish and unrestrained, are only one design of the moving, the vivacious many. 1,000 mornings. All night, my heart makes its way, however it can, over the rough ground of uncertainties, but only until night meets and then is overwhelmed by morning, the light deepening, the wind easing, and just waiting, as I too wait. And when have I ever been disappointed? For the redbird to sing. Now it is my delight and pleasure to introduce Courteney Bailey.
Thank you. First, we're going to start with an old story. Sleep comes its little while. Then I wake in the valley of midnight or 3 a.m. to the first fragrances of spring, which is coming all by itself, no matter what. My heart says, what you thought you have, you do not have. My body says, will this pounding ever stop? My heart says, there, be a good student. My body says, let me up and out. I want to fondle those soft white flowers open in the night. Hum, hum. One summer afternoon, I heard a looming, mysterious hum high in the air. Then came something like a small planet flying past, something not at all interested in me, but on its own way somewhere, all anointed with excitement. Bees swarming, not to be held back. Nothing could hold them back. Gannets diving. Black snake wrapped in a tree, our eyes meeting. The grass singing as it sipped up the summer rain. The owl in the darkness, that good darkness under the stars. The child that was myself, that kept running away to the also running creek, to colt's foot and trilliums, to the effortless prattle of the birds. said the mother. You are going to grow up, and in order for that to happen, I am going to have to grow old, and then I will die, and the blame will be yours. Of the father. He wanted a body, so he took mine. Some wounds never vanish. Yet little by little, I learned to love my life. Though sometimes I had to run hard, especially from melancholy, not to be held back. I think there ought to be a little music here. Hum, hum. The resurrection of the morning, the mystery of the night, the hummingbird's wings, the excitement of thunder, the rainbow in the waterfall. Wild mustard, that rough blaze of the fields, the mockingbird replaying the songs of his neighbors, the bluebird with its unambitious warble, simple yet sufficient, the shining fish, the beak of the crow, the new colt who came to me and leaned against the fence that I might put my hands upon his warm body and know no fear. Also the words of poets, 100 or hundreds of years dead, their words that would not be held back. Oh, the house of denial has thick walls and very small windows, and whoever lives there, little by little, will turn to stone. In those years, I did everything I could do, and I did it in the dark. I mean, without understanding. I ran away. I ran away again. Then again, I ran away. They were awfully little, those bees, and maybe frightened, yet unstoppably they flew on somewhere to live their life. Hum, hum, hum. I have decided. I have decided to find myself a home in the mountains, somewhere high up where one learns to live peacefully in the cold and the silence. It's said that in such a place, certain revelations may be discovered, that what the spirit reaches for may be eventually felt, if not exactly understood. Slowly, no doubt. I'm not talking about a vacation. Of course, at the same time, I mean to stay exactly where I am. Are you following me? Was it necessary to do it? I tell you, that ant is very alive. Look at how he fusses at being stepped on. Green, green is my sister's house. Don't you dare climb that tree or even try, they said, or you will be sent away to the hospital of the very foolish, if not the other one. And I suppose, considering my age, it was fair advice. But the tree is a sister to me. She lives alone in a green cottage high in the air, and I know what would happen. She'd clap her green hands, she'd shake her green hair, she'd welcome me, truly. I try to be good, but sometimes a person just has to break out and act like the wild and springy thing one used to be. It's impossible not to remember wild and want it back. So if someday you can't find me, you might look into that tree, or of course, if it's possible, under it. The instant. Today, one small snake lay looped and solitary in the high grass. It swirled to look, didn't like what it saw, and was gone in 2 pulses, forward and with no sound at all, only 2 taps in disarray from the other shy one, my heart. That's it for me, and now I have the pleasure to throw it to another Susan. Susan in red.
The chickens ate all the crickets. The foxes ate all the chickens. This morning a friend hauled his boat to shore and gave me the most wondrous fish. In its silver scales, it seemed dressed for a wedding. The gills were pulsing just above where shoulders would be, if it had shoulders. The eyes were still looking around. I don't know what they were thinking. The chickens ate all the crickets. The foxes ate all the chickens. I ate the fish. Extending the airport runway. The good citizens of the commission cast their votes for more of everything. Very early in the morning, I go out to the pale dunes to look over the empty spaces of the wilderness, where something is there. Something is there when nothing is there but itself. That is not there when anything else is. Alas, the good citizens of the commission have never seen it, whatever it is, formless yet palpable, very shiny, very delicate, very rare. Tides. Every day the sea, blue, gray, green, lavender, pulls away, leaving the harbor's dark cobbled undercoat, slick and rutted and worm-riddled. The gulls walk there among the old whale bones. The white spines of fish blink from the strandy stew as the hours tick over, and then far out, the faint sheer line turns, rustling over the slack, the outer bars, over the green-furred flats, over the clam beds, slippery logs, barnacle-studded stones, dragging the shining sheets forward, deepening, pushing, wreathing together wave and seaweed, their piled curvatures spilling over themselves, lapping blue, gray, green, lavender. Never resting, not ever, but fashioning shore, continent, everything. And here you may find me on almost any morning, walking along the shore, so light-footed, so casual. Out of the stump rot, something. Out of the stump rot, something glides forward that is not a rope, unless a rope has eyes, lips, tongue like a smack of smoke, body without shoulders. Thus, the black snake, floating over the leaves of the old year and down to the pond, to the green just beginning to fuzzle out of the earth, also like smoke. If you like a prettiness, don't come here. Look at pictures instead, or wait for the daffodils. This is spring by the rattled pond in the shambled woods, as spring has always been and always will be, no matter what we do in the suburbs. The matted fur, the red blood, the bats unshuttering their terrible faces, and black snake gliding across the field you think you own. Long neck, long tail, tongue on fire, heart of stone. In the woods, sometimes a rare music. Every spring, I hear the thrush singing in the glowing woods. He's only passing through. His voice is deep. Then he lifts it until it seems to fall from the sky. I am thrilled. I am grateful. Then by the end of the morning, he's gone. Nothing but silence out of the tree where he rested for a night. And this I find acceptable. Not enough is a poor life, but too much is just, well, too much. Imagine Verdi or Mahler every day, all day. It would exhaust anyone. The morning paper. Read one morning paper daily. The morning edition is the best. For by evening, you know that you have at least lived through another day. And let the disasters, the unbelievable yet approved decisions soak in. I don't need to name the countries, ours among them. What keeps us from falling down, our faces to the ground, ashamed, ashamed? And now I'm going to introduce Lynne Bronstein.
The poet compares human nature to the ocean from which we came. The sea can do craziness. It can do smooth. It can lie down like silk breathing or toss havoc shoreward. It can give gifts to withhold or withhold all. It can rise, ebb, froth like an incoming frenzy of fountains, or it can sweet talk entirely, as I can too. And so, no doubt, can you and you. I'm traveling to beautiful places. Every day, I'm still looking for God, and I'm still finding him everywhere, in the dust, in the flower beds, certainly in the oceans, in the islands that lay in the distance, continents of ice, countries of sand, each with its own set of creatures, and God, by whatever name, how perfect to be aboard a ship with maybe 100 years still in my pocket. But it's late for all of us, and in truth, the only ship there is the ship we are all on, burning the world as we go. The man who has many answers. The man who has many answers is often found in the theaters of information, where he offers graciously his deep findings, while the man who has only questions to comfort himself makes music. Life story. When I lived under the black oaks, I felt I was made of leaves. When I lived by Little Sister Pond, I dreamed I was the feather of the blue heron left on the shore. I was the pond lily, my root delicate as an artery, my face like a star, my happiness brimming. Later, I was the footsteps that follow the sea. I knew the tides. I knew the ingredients of the rack. I knew the eider, the red-throated loon with his uplifted beak and his smart eye. I felt I was the tip of the wave, the pearl of water on the eider's glossy back. No, there's no escaping, nor would I want to escape this outgo, this foot loosening, this solution to gravity and a single shape. Now, I am here. Later, I will be there. I will be that small cloud staring down at the water, the one that stalls, that lifts its white legs, that looks like a lamb. For I will consider my dog Percy. For I will consider my dog Percy, for he was made small but brave of heart. For if he met another dog, he would kiss her in kindness. For when he slept, he snored only a little. For he could be silly and noble in the same moment. For when he spoke, he remembered the trumpet, and when he scratched, he struck the floor like a drum. For he ate only the finest food and drank only the purest of water, yet would nibble of dead fish also. For he came to me impaired and therefore certain of short life, yet thoroughly rejoiced in each day. For he took his medicines without argument. For he played easily with the neighbor's full mastiff. For when he came upon mud, he splashed through it. For he was an instrument for the children to learn benevolence upon. For he listened to poems as well as love talk. For when he sniffed, it was as if he were being pleased by every part of the world. For when he sickened, he rallied as many times as he could. For he was a mixture of gravity and waggery. For we humans can seek self-destruction in ways he never dreamed of. For he took actions both cunning and reckless, yet refused always to offer himself to be admonished. For his sadness, though without words, was understandable. For there was nothing sweeter than his peace when at rest. For there was nothing brisker than his life when in motion. For he was of the tribe of wolf. For when I went away, he would watch for me at the window. For he loved me. For he suffered before I found him and never forgot it. For he loved Anne. For when he lay down to enter sleep, he did not argue about whether or not God made him. For he could fling himself upside down and laugh a true laugh. For he loved his friend Rocky. For he would dig holes in the sand and then let Ricky lie in them. For often I see his shape in the clouds, and this is a continual blessing. Varanasi. Early in the morning, we crossed the Ghat where fires were still smoldering and gazed with our Western minds into the Ganges. A woman was standing in the river up to her waist. She was lifting handfuls of water and spilling it over her body, slowly and many times, as if until there came some moment of inner satisfaction between her own life and the river's. Then she dipped a vessel she had brought with her and carried it filled with water back across the Ghat, no doubt to refresh some shrine near where she lives, for this is the holy city of Shiva, maker of the world, and this is his river. I can't say much more except that it all happened in silence and peaceful simplicity, and something that felt like the bliss of a certainty and a life lived in accordance with that certainty. I must remember this, I thought, as we fly back to America. Pray God, I remember this. And now I'd like to turn things back to Harry.
So let's just go around the horn as we read, Corinne, Ike, Amélie, Courtney, Susan, and Lynne, and talk about the poetry and the reading, if you would please. Corinne.
Well, I find it quite exciting to listen to a whole group of Mary Oliver poems, because she makes you so aware of life, of every moment. I mean, anything fluttering in the wind, she seems to grasp onto. I'm surprised she hasn't written a poem about brushing your teeth and the beautiful foam that sometimes appears, because she seems to nourish everything about life. I was very surprised when Courteney Bailey was reading. I think there were poems about when she was a little girl, and there seemed to be some darkness there that obviously she's still not sinking into, but I guess overlooking. But she's a wonderful poet to read, to really feel the fulfillment in life. Yeah.
I was not familiar with her at all. And when you said Edna St. Vincent Millay, I was feeling a lot of that as I was reading these. And I like Corinne said, I love how she takes something. I love poets who can find just beauty in the mundacity of life and the small little things that we all take for granted. And I think it was one poem that I think Corinne was reading that I was thinking about it so much when it was the gardener was a simple man. That and the flowers were his children. That really, 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 really resonated with me. I think the best poems are ones that you think about for days and weeks afterwards. And that's one that I can just tell will be stuck in my head for a while. And I really loved, and Bob Dylan too. I'm a Bob Dylan freak, and I loved how it kind of dealt with him in just the mere abstraction. And you know what I mean? When I see a poem, I'm so basic that when I see a poem and Bob Dylan, I'm like, oh, this is going to be about Bob Dylan, blah, blah. But it was more of an abstraction, I thought. So really just really, really beautiful. And I'm kind of reordering these now so I can read them to my daughters tonight, because I think they would get a kick out of it. So really, really wonderful stuff, Harry.
Courtney?
Yeah, that's really lovely. Corinne, that poem. So as Harry, I know some of Mary Oliver's poems, and someone very close to me gave me her book of devotions recently when I was going through a hard time, and she told me to just open the pages, and whatever you land on, it's going to mean something. And I love doing that with books anyways. But hum. To your point, Corinne, it's like she's such a wonderful observer of everything around her. And I imagined as I was reading it, I had never read this one before, and she's laying down and seeing the bees and we've all laid in the grass and looked up and observed everything around us, which those small, beautiful moments. And there were some very dark moments, because as a mom, it says you're going to grow up, and in order for that to happen, I'm going to have to grow old, and then I will die, and the blame will be yours. And I was like very thrown by that line, because I didn't know the story behind it and what the voice was saying, and then to say, of the father, he wanted a body, so he took mine, and some of those wounds will never vanish. But it was still, and then it went right back to, I think there ought to be a little music here. And that line to me resonated really deeply, because I think in any moment in life, I want to sit back and think I think there ought to be a little music here. And it could be any kind of music, anything can kind of soundtrack our lives. And I thank you, Harry, for always kind of opening up our minds to new things and new voices. And I don't take enough time to read poetry and to really think about it because life. And to Ike's point, I'm definitely... Ike, I will say I've had my daughter, Harry has invited my daughter. She read the Amanda Gorman poem. Remember, Harry?
Oh, wow.
It was beautiful.
And maybe one of your kiddos could come on one day. But I will, in a funny way, say there's one poem I'm not going to read to my daughter, Blake, and that's Blake's Dying. So I will not read that one.
Yes, don't read that one. Not that one.
I think we'll skip that one, even though it was about but anyways, Harry, this is just beautiful. And Mary's poetry is quite dark at times, but very introspective and very lovely. And it was a nice journey.
Yeah.
And I got to say, Susan and Corinne and all these gorgeous women, like, you read these poems. I was nervous because I'm like, I can't read like you all read. And I learn every time I come on this show, and Amélie, and just really beautiful.
Mm.
I wanted to hop in for a quick second just to say I am shocked by the bravery and the simplicity. A couple of these poems, it was 2 lines, and to have the objective sense that this matters, this is important enough for me to put it down on paper is very brave. That's all I'm going to say.
Love it.
Yes.
Susan?
Yes. Well, I got the lighter poems, fortunately, and I'm sitting here looking out the window at a tree, and there are squirrels, there are birds, and I thought, how perfect to read her poetry and look out at this beautiful scene.
Mm.
And I was not familiar with her work. And I was interested to learn that she was born the same year that I was born. And I really enjoyed her work and enjoyed hearing everybody else read her poems.
Lynne?
Well, I was mostly impressed with the fact that Mary Oliver seems to be the integral opposite of what I write about. I'm very urban. I can't help it. I was born in New York City. And New York and Los Angeles are the 2 places I'm really familiar with. And I write about things like subways and urban problems. And her work is very out in the country. It's very about nature. So it's very different. It has a peaceful atmosphere to it. But she's aware of the world, too, as some of her poems mention. The turbulence, and one of the poems Amélie read was about that. And so I just allowed myself to get immersed in the fact that this is someone else's experience, but it's like acting. You become another character. You try to live in that character's skin and see what is going on. And I guess the poem I really had no trouble empathizing with, however, was the poem about her dog, because I'm very into animals. And although I'm a cat person for the most part, I love dogs too. And as I was reading that poem about Percy, the second of 2 poems about him, I realized this must have been the eulogy for Percy.
Uh-huh.
That's what it sounds like. And I found myself becoming sad as I reached toward the end of it, really getting into this tribute to this dog, everything that this dog was, and how much our animal companions are part of our family. So it was really beautiful. And I am grateful to Harry for asking me to be part of this reading and live in Mary Oliver's world for a little bit.
Mm.
Well, thank you all for such a radiant and loving reading of Mary Oliver's poetry. It's sagacious, and it's a prayer too, and it's a way of life. And I just wanted to add to what you've all said. Ike brought up the Bob Dylan poem, and in it, she wrote, "Anything worth thinking about is worth singing about." I'm sure that goes for writing as well as comedy. And also she talked about three things to remember. As long as you're dancing, you can break the rules. Sometimes breaking the rules is just extending the rules. Sometimes there are no rules. So also we all have freedom, to bring into play those things that, beyond the rational, and just keep putting our mind and our imagination out there on the page or on the screen. And so you've all done such great work. You're all such beautiful and poignant and readings. You get inside the poem and you interpret it for us, and you bring extra meaning to the language that you're reading to us. So I'm just so grateful for all of you. It's just such a exhilarating, sacred time for me. We have, we have a lot of time. We have like 8 or 9 minutes left. So why don't we just go around and just say something about poetry? Whatever you'd like to say. The same order. When did you write or read your first poem? What do you like about poetry? What does poetry mean to you? What is poetry? Anything in that realm. Corinne?
Well, I think when I'm often when I'm reading here, I'm always amazed that, well, you do feel that a poem sometimes just gets to the essence of what we're talking about. And not so much material things or what have you, but in talking about leaves and trees and ordinary happenstances. But a poem will give you the essence of what you were feeling at that moment, which is really not what you're looking at. It's what you're feeling. And that's the great thing, it seems to me, about poetry. No matter what the words are, it all ends up, or it all means that an emotion that you're feeling, it seems to me.
Ike?
Well, I grew up in a very, a poetry forward home in Chicago, I would say, or apartment. But my mom, I remember when I was little, my mom would read me a lot of Walt Whitman, and Leaves of Grass was like a big thing in our house that we talked about. And, I look to poetry. I think it is one of the simplest forms of human expression. And I don't mean simple and it's an easy way, but it's the most reductive to human emotion. Like Corinne was saying, it's all about your feeling. And I feel like in an increasingly inhuman world, where, there's a lot of bad things happening, but also just where technology is starting to try to, no pun intended, trump humanity. I think poetry is one of the last kind of bastions of human expression and emotion that we all have. So I'm very fortunate to be able to share that with you all today, and you, Harry.
Amélie?
I have a particular observation about poetry, and that we go through stages as we mature as poets. Young poets, people just getting started in coffee houses or their first creative writing course, they tend to stick to form or play around with form, but they don't contemplate so much their feelings or how something in nature makes them feel. The next level I see in poetry is when people start to express their feelings and it becomes more poet-centric. Moving further along the evolution is when they start experiencing and expressing and mirroring the world rather than disgorging how they feel about the world, but they start letting the world speak for itself by just holding up the mirror. And finally, I think the greatest poets, the ones who have achieved their highest powers, are those who become prophetic and visionary, and are showing us not only nature, but states of thinking that we only attain in maturity if we're wise. And anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Courtney?
Ooh, that's hard to follow. I just, when Harry, every time I either watch your show or just thinking about what everyone said today, which I agree with. So I will wisely adopt your wise words. But I remember a turning point in my life in poetry when I had to, when poetry was a memorization practice, when you were a young kid and you had to recite a poem in your English class, and "Oh, Captain, my Captain," the Walt Whitman poem was one of those where I was so focused on the just memorization of, and I could tell you I nailed that part and I had no idea what it meant. And then it came years later when I actually thought, well, that was a silly practice in that I didn't read the words and feel the words. And that's what poetry is about. It's about no judgment. I was an English major at UCLA, and I remember writing a poem and they said, "Oh, you should be a songwriter. It's too sing-songy." And I'm like, I thought this was supposed to not be judgmental. And, maybe that's how I write and that's what it is. But in all of this, it reminds us that, yes, you can just express in whatever form you want, whether it rhymes, it's an observation, it doesn't make any sense. And I think we need to get back to that and just kind of stream of consciousness and just put out what we're feeling, because, to Ike's point, this is a very interesting time in our lives and the world and politics and everything. And poetry kind of is that beautiful through line of connection. And I love that.
Susan?
Well, listening to what everyone has to say about their impressions of poetry, is it a simple idea that someone's making complex, or is it the other way around? And unlike a short story or a novel, you only have, a limited number of lines to get an idea across. And that, to me, is what makes it so interesting.
Lynne?
I've been writing poetry since I was about 9, and it's just never stopped. And although I also write fiction and journalism, I see each one of these writing forms as having a different way of telling a story because of the different structure involved. Journalism is realistic. Fiction can have a realistic basis, but it goes into many different places depending on the genre. And poetry is in a realm, I think, to itself that begins very much with feelings rather than facts, with images that cannot be proved scientifically, with worlds that only the poet knows and which would otherwise be considered madness. But all artists are mad, right? But it really is its own world where there really are no rules. There may be rules as to a particular poetic form, like a sonnet or a villanelle, but the poet is really breaking all rules of communication by being personal and worldly at the same time sometimes, and by coming up with images, with insights, with the personae, with wordplay, with humor, with pathos, with references to history and references to the other arts. So it all spins around and it really encompasses everything, even though in today's world it has been downgraded greatly from what it ought to be. And the people who are involved in it are the people usually who write it. But if it didn't exist at all, probably the rest of it wouldn't exist either.
Well, thank you all for your great insights into poetry. And I just want to say once again that you've all lifted me up. And I feel a sense of exaltation and sacredness about this hour. And you've all just done such a marvelous job. And one thing, Lynne, in terms of the poem you read about the dog at the end, it was based on Christopher Smart, his poem for my cat, Jeffrey. And he was, in an institution for a while. So he was an incredible poet, too. So thank you. And I am going to announce next poetry show. There will be no poetry show next week because of the Thanksgiving holiday. So I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. And then our next show will be Tuesday, December 2nd with the superb poets Martha Ronk and David Garyan. David, he lives in Italy, and he's wonderful. So thank you once again. Corinne Conley, Ike Barinholtz, Amélie Frank, Courteney Bailey, Susan Nathe, Lynne Bronstein, and our beloved leader, Jennifer Clymer.
Yeah.
Thank you. You, Harry. Thank you. Harry, thank you for pulling together an amazing show once again, and for taking us back into the international realm in December, right? We're hearing from Italy. We've heard from Australia. We've heard from Ireland. Like, you make us grander, and I'm so appreciative.